Yeah. Give it 1 second to load, and then we can begin. All right. Okay, so we're recording. All right. So, what to tell you? All right, so where to begin? Basically, I'll just give you a little history about myself. I've been in the planning field for over the past 20 years. I've worked for City of Mount Vernon prior to this, Township of Irvington in New Jersey prior to that, the town of Islip, and before that, Nassau County as a planner. So I've worked.
William, you cut out. And
now I lost you again.
Yep, you're on mute. Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
What happened? I don't know what's going on with this thing.
That's reading out. Just like that.
No.
Can't hear you now, William.
You
You
can
can
or
or you can't?
I can. Now I can, but a minute ago I couldn't.
All
All
right.
right.
William, when were you in Islip?
2004.
Yeah, I worked out there a lot.
Yeah. All right. So with that, let's jump into the questions.
Quick question. Were you there with Dave Janover?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, let's jump into the questions. Question one. I'm sorry, sometimes this thing acts funny. Question one, what is the commission's current process? Somebody submits an application, walk me through it. What happens? What is your understanding of the process?
Well, what we're supposed to get is we get a preliminary review, and then after, and we express any secret concerns, and then it's supposed to come back to us for consistency when they have all other necessary permits, secret process is done, and they've resolved anything they know to be an issue, and they think the application is complete, and the staff thinks the application is complete for us to. Oh, thank you. You put it up on the. Comes up for preliminary review, and then comes back to us for consistency when they have all their permits, when the application is complete, when the secret process is complete, and we can determine consistency. Then if we have questions or changes, it may have to come up for consistency more than once.
Tom, are you distinguishing that from the permit applications for the building permits?
Well, I'm talking about consistency, but where the permitting authority for Harbor Coastal for marine structures, which is, so the fair answer to that is we really have two roles. We are a permitting authority sometimes, and we are a consistency authority other times. For consistency, preliminary review, and then after SECRA and all other permits, we do a review for consistency that may have to come before us multiple times if there are changes to the application in order to align it with the policies.
All other
Permits.
Got it. Okay.
And the reason for that, obviously, and you don't have the institutional memory, but within my time, which is only 2 years on this commission, we have had projects where input from another permitting, another authority such as DEC, have come back in the middle of our review and required significant changes, right? So if, for example, the state says that they need a change to something to align with how they do things, that requires us to rethink about the project. It may be a different in material ways. So we want to know that they've got their Army Corps of Engineers, their SHPO, their DEC, their Department of State, that they've got all that squared away, so they won't have to change something for another authority. Because when we determine consistency, we have to know that we're talking about the final project.
And Thomas, it seems to me from my time on the board, which has only been about 1 year, that there seems to be a burden, whether it's just the commissioner's preference, or whether it's codified, I don't know, but a preference to the burden of proof is on the applicant, that where there's not a review or a permit or something necessary from one of the key agencies, that they get in touch and kind of get something of a negative declaration too. So I do see that as something that seems to be part of the process, and that we tend to apply pretty consistently across the board.
Yeah, thank you. That's an accurate statement. We virtually always affirmatively ask the applicant about every permitting authority that we think might weigh in. We usually run through a checklist of other permitting authorities and affirmatively ask them, do you need anything from Corps of Engineers? Do you need anything from DEC? Do you need anything? Have you checked SHPO? Is there anything in the vicinity that's old enough that it could be a listed building? That sort of thing. If it's and then if we know, for example, there are certain kinds of environmental concerns. Is it a Superfund site? How far from the Superfund site are you? We affirmatively raise those things, and if the applicant hasn't thought about them, they need to think about them and see what they need. Typically, if there's an agency that can say our hands are off this one, we expect them to secure that.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. So you touched on sort of that aspect of it in terms of you wanting to make sure that applicants have the other permits in place before they come to your board. But talk to me about information that beyond what other permits the applicant may need. What specific items does your board need in order to make its assessment outside of other permitting agencies? So, for example, what type of plans would you need?
Usually this is where Doreen steps in, because she has a laundry list in her head, and I'm usually only following that we need usually a complete set of plans that demarcates all the things we would worry about. So, for example, and it depends on what it's in front of us for. Often it's in front of us for consistency because of a wetlands issue. In that case, we need demarcation of everything that comes along with that: coastal area hazard, erosion, wetlands and 100-foot buffer. If it's near a significant habitat, among the first things we're going to look for are going to be the environmental considerations. What's on the property? Whether is there foliage, flora and fauna that is there landscaping that would affect how it interacts with the environment, stuff like that. I think it's hard to be comprehensive in the abstract. Certainly I can't do it off the top of my head, but we need to know everything that would affect the policies that we need to consider. There are 44 of them, though some of them are of course blank, and anything that's raised by the project, we need it marked. So you can't come in and tell us you've got the wetland 100-foot buffer, but you haven't marked coastal, you haven't marked an erosion area, because if there's a CHA line, we need to see that. We need to know if, if you're building within the buffer, but it's only by 5 feet, but you're also within an erosion hazard area. We're going to have to look at that and consider it in its totality.
Okay.
Now, if I could just add to that, one of the things that I've always felt would be helpful would be that we get a survey of the property and then a site plan indicating as exists and then as proposed. And it should indicate, as Tom had mentioned, the wetland boundaries, et cetera, and other boundaries that are pertinent to the review. The other thing, just to throw at you, is I know that the present application, I think, asks for who the owner is. One issue that always comes up is I think that they have to show, I'd like to know the ownership of the property in its entirety, including underwater. And if they have any, if they don't own it, if they have any, what's their right to utilize it for the project? So that's clear.
Thank you, David. That's come up. That's come up because there have been a few things where there have been marines. It comes up with marine structures. There have been a few things that have raised marine structure issues where we go through a meeting or two with some unclarity about who owns the underwater lands. We're not going to issue a marine structures permit if we don't know who owns the underwater land.
Yes, and even if it's not the applicant, it could very well be somebody with a right to make the application, but then the owner obviously has to consent or authorize it to be heard.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe, Tom, I don't know if this is appropriate, but as probably the newest member here, the one issue that always baffles me when I get this package, which I give credit to the people thinking, if I get how much time that would take for each of these packages to read, because I think they go overboard. But I'd love to see a summary sheet, because I think sometimes the detail just buries us, at least buries me. I can't speak for others, but and then you have to dig your way through. And I find that maybe it's the preparation of the papers that are submitted with the plans, with the descriptions, with the history. I mean, it's basically volumes. I guess I would like to see something where there's a summary sheet on the top that says, okay, what exactly is the property being changed? What are the changes? And not allow them to have more than a half a page. And the font's got to be with a microscope, so be it. But it just seems to me that sometimes everything gets lost in the detail as opposed to, okay, this is a project where I bought this property and I'd like to do X, Y, and Z with it. This is and this, this and this. And kind of do that with the summary and the pictures. I just find, and it's not germane necessarily just to this commission, but to other boards, that sometimes you just paper someone to death. And I hate to say it, but it gets lost in there. And Tom, I know in your work, I mean, I'm sure you do things where you don't have that luxury to just go on and on and on. I mean, you've handled matters where you have maybe 25, 30 minutes to do what you'd love to. Can I have a few days and come back and come back and come back? No do-overs. And
David,
serious.
I'm up in front of the Ninth Circuit
Right.
in a few weeks, and I will have 5 minutes.
You know what? And I tell you something, it's like really and truly, there's much to be said for that. And the longer I've served on boards or commissions, I've found, wow, guys, I've gone up before circuits and other places, and you have 5, 10, 15 minutes. I mean, and that's it. And guess what? You can do it. And the better you do it, the more you realize how much extra time there is. But I mean, it is, and I find when someone papers you, it just the whole process begins with this. It's burdensome. And I think we lose sight sometimes of what it is we're trying to review, what it is that's going on. And I mean, a couple of hearings I've been to where ownership comes up and things come up. Why wasn't that up front? Why didn't you just say, this is my property, this is not? Lay it out, boom. You should have a summary sheet, summary page, and then refer to the plans, and you want to make a little sermon about it, fine. Then you can read the sermon. And the zoning board's famous for that. I mean, we used to get those where somebody would submit 40 pages, which was already enough, and then tell you, well, I just want to just go through it with you. Okay, so now it's like 80 pages because I hit the 40 twice. So I don't know. But and also,
William, there is Oh, go ahead, David. You
No, just last point, Thomas, because I just, when are submissions made? Because I saw, well, it was Doreen or someone else commented, because that's offensive. When someone gives you a submission, either at the hearing or that day or the day before, I just want to say, listen, office, I'm not coming in tomorrow. I'm really going to do this right. I'm going to go and read everything that you waited until the last minute to give me. And no, it doesn't happen that way. And I think there should be a cutoff. And if someone doesn't meet that cutoff, that's it. And it's also not fair to the public because they can get access to them, but they can't if it's at the last second. Enough said. Sorry to trouble.
So, William, I think you're hearing that there's some tension, and I think it's real tension in many of our minds between simplicity of application, where we can easily see what the core of this thing is, and completeness of application, because there are certainly commissioners who who dig for more detail and say, why isn't this here? So we, on the one hand, we want things to be complete and we want to have a full understanding of what it is we're voting on. On the other hand, it's a lot of stuff, and we're all volunteers and we have busy lives and we spend a lot of time digging through to understand the applications. Ideally, every application would be both complete and easily understood. That is an ideal that we struggle to realize. We're more often either very complete or easily understood, but not both.
I think some of what we've done in putting together a draft of the new application could be helpful. It's organized a little better. We can continue to have input on it. But it does sort of have a, you got to answer these objective questions about the property, section, block, lot, land, description, and then a description of the proposed activity. So that application could probably work a little better as if we read those 3 pages, we know exactly where the property is and have a paragraph of discussion about it.
Fair enough. Is there anything else or keep going?
I think you got it.
Fair enough. Is the Coastal Commission advisory? So right now, when you read the code says that the Coastal Commission is advisory. Is that the case, considering the fact that the Coastal Commission actually issues a determination and it issues a perimeter permit and a marine structure permit?
It's not advisory. That there may be some technical sense in which that's the case, but as a practical matter, that is not correct. If it's up before us for consistency and we find it not consistent, the only way to deal with that is in Article 78, unless it's a public process, in which case sometimes there's an available override. If it's up in front of us for a marine structures permit, we're the permitting authority, and if we deny it, the permit does not issue. So as functionally, we are not advisory.
William, I think the confusion comes in. I agree with that characterization by Thomas. I think where it comes in is if the supreme body or legislative body in the village is the Board of Trustees, then the Harbor Coastal is advisory to the Board of Trustees. But in other circumstances that Thomas outlined, it's controlling.
Got it.
Yeah, Tom, my recollection, and I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me, is because the Williams letter made me go and look at that, was we are clearly determinative in aspects of the permitting agency where it actually discusses there the fact public hearings have to take place, et cetera, and you challenge that to a 78. But there's another section, and it's funny how or another portion of that section, that deals where we're advisory, I believe, to the board, trustees, or others. So I guess it's a dual role because the code gives us 2 roles. I didn't know that was challengeable. I thought that the one that's advisory is where we're asked, anyone can come to us. I thought, I don't have it in front of me, but one section on that, whatever, 240 or something. So but I think we have 2 separate roles, isn't that right? Depending upon what it is.
I would agree with that. I mean, based off my read is that, you have multiple functions and multiple duties. And that's, one of them is advisory. The other one is making decisions.
There are public infrastructure projects and stuff where the Board of Trustees has an override, and there are criteria that must be met for the override, and in that sense, we're advisory. And on things like public law C, last year the infill housing development law was referred to us, but the referral to us was advisory, and we gave them advice.
Anything else or moving on?
Let's keep moving.
All right. Code says that, and this has helped me understand. So the code says that you consist of 7 voting members and 1 non-voting member. Does that mean that you are a board of 8 people?
Not for, not for quorum purposes. We've always treated quorum as majority of 7 voting members.
So does the Harbor Coastal, what is he? He's the
Harbor Master.
the Harbor Master. Does he come to the meetings or no?
He used to. That's a good point. Joe Russo used to. Joe Russo's out on a medical condition, and Jeff LaRusso, who's a Bay Constable, which is basically a policeman in a boat, is the new acting Harbor Master, and I think he's going to slide into that full-time position. And we should actually make an overture to him to try to get him. I've actually looked for him on occasions. I've known him for years. He's actually a marine mechanic, used to work at Brewers. Now he has his own operation, own marina in New Jersey. But we should reach out to him. I think that would be a good move.
Now, if he comes to the meeting, he's not voting. What is his function?
He's advisory.
Well, he's a member of I guess he participates in a meeting. It would be no different, wouldn't it, than anyone else who participates in a meeting but just doesn't get to vote.
It's deliberative, right? He can ask, if
Right.
especially on issues of, issues that are harbor facing and marine structure issues, he can ask a question just like we would question an applicant, say we need more information, just not vote.
And he serves a pretty important function at times. These applications, a lot of them are waterfront properties. He's got a harbor master's boat. He invites the commissioners out. We can't have we can't have a quorum. Then we have to notice it. But he'll take you out in the boat. You can see the applicant's property from the sea, from the water. It's usually an interesting perspective. You can see things from the water you can't see from the land. And he's a pretty integral part of the whole thing and a real value, in my opinion.
Matt,
Right.
William, what's the section? What's the section that deals with the number and the ex officio?
It's chapter 240.
30, 20, 35, 35 maybe?
Yeah, 35.
Yeah, okay. Because doesn't that say it shall consist of 7? I mean, it's weirdly written. I think.
Right, that's
It says shall consist of 7 members. And that's fine. And you read the whole thing, and I believe it's the last sentence. It is the last sentence says, this is poor drafting. The harbor master shall be a non-voting ex officio member of the commission. Yeah, 7 and 1 is 8. I know. You're right. But he can't vote, so it doesn't count for a vote.
Yeah, it's right. It's
it's
ex officio in the sense that he's only a member for some purposes. He's not a full member.
Yeah, it should say he should be participating in something. It's like the building department on a zoning. They show up, but they don't.
Fair enough. So
It's an
he gives
interesting way of-
advice.
but it's
He's like
interesting.
staff almost. Like staff. I go to your meetings. I'm sitting there. I'm participating to some degree, but I don't vote. I don't, make any, So I don't something like that, I guess.
Yeah, but he's different. If you say someone's an ex officio member, then they're a commissioner.
Okay.
And the sense is they have certain, I guess, certain things they have to comply with. I mean, it's a weirdly written thing.
Okay.
So, but
These are other questions are just to give me some clarity. So, I know one of the commissioners asked, what some of these questions have to do with your process. They also provide me, this is my first chance of really actually having a conversation with you all one-on-one.
Sure.
So some of these questions kind of help give me some perspective. That's all. Right now, I believe the code says that a perimeter permit lasts for 5 years with 2 additional 5-year extensions. Do you find that to be appropriate? Is that too much?
Does it matter?
I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
asking. I don't know if
We've
it matters.
never had a problem. We've
That's a
never,
legislative.
Okay.
I've never seen a problem with that. It is going to come up on 565 or 535 Shore Acres, the application where the pier blew into the harbor due to that Isaias tropical storm, because that permit's been out for five years or more. That's the only one. That's the only application that I've dealt with that would come into play. But it should still be looked at. Most of the stuff is done timely. That person got approved a long time ago and mentioned to me at the site visit that
If I can just really quick, as opposed to talking in the general about specific projects, keep it very broad. All right. So you can talk about it, but talk about it in a broad sense, so that because again, this is not it's not a public hearing, and the public can't really participate. So just speak from a broad perspective.
Yeah. Okay. So there's only one that's only come up once.
Okay.
Or will come up once.
Fair enough.
Isn't that covered though by the code, the length of time on that?
Yes, it is in the code, but I was just wondering, does the commission have any concern? Is it a concern? Is it not? Is it okay? I don't know. That's why I asked.
Yeah, none of us had that anywhere near the forefront of our mind as something we would like to change.
Fair enough.
Although we can change.
All right. So does and or should the marine structure permit expire and or match the expiration and or renewal of the perimeter permit?
Yeah, again, not on a short list.
Yeah, I thought the marine structure permit was good for 5 years.
5 years.
Or does it say that? I'd have to look again to remember what it says. I don't know that they match. They may not. But again, if it's not at the forefront of your list, you can keep it moving.
Was that 24021 or something? Okay.
Applications when they're denied. So if an application is denied, what happens? Are they able to come back with the same application?
As a practical matter, no, because we'll say the same thing.
Yeah, but
No one's tried that. No one's ever tried coming back and saying, well, are you okay with it now? Because
there's a body of law in New York. And some codes used to deal with restrictions on how many months, et cetera. But there's a body of law in New York under the phrase or the terminology, I believe, is administrative stare decisis. And that's that it's improper and it would be reversible for a board or commission to make a determination on the same set of facts, absent certain enumerated conditions, such as there's been a substantial change, substantial time period. I mean, I think that's New York law. I mean, I'm not saying some codes may not address it to avoid it, but there's a set of criteria, because I do recall once seeing an application where I said, aside from the name of the attorney, is there anything else substantively different? And I was very new on that board and kind of got looked at, but I was right on point. But it's, I don't know what the law is, but it's clearly the law in New York.
David, isn't that the definition of arbitrary and capricious? If
Yes.
on June 1st, it's the same set of circumstances and you say yes, and then on September 1st, the same set of circumstances you say no, that's arbitrary, right?
It is arbitrary, but in addition to that, they're holding it's a separate doctrine, and the doctrine is one of once you make a decision, you're bound to apply that to all people and all applicants that are similarly situated, including the very applicant before whom you had. So you're right that it would be arbitrary, but I think the doctrine is a separate one. It's the stare decisis that you have to follow your own decisions. So I think they overlap, but they're different.
3 lawyers on a panel, you're going to get some legalese.
Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. So with that being the case, and while it may be New York State law, I have yet to come across it. I'm not saying it's not so. I would like to find it and keep a copy for myself. But at the same time, do you feel that you should have a clause within your rules and procedures that, address the matter?
It's not something crying out for a fix. That's solving a problem we don't have.
Okay, fair enough. Again, and your start time at 7:30, is that too late? That's too early? Is that fine?
Lovely.
The more life goes back to normal, the more we're going to have to schlep out from the city. 7:30 allows those of us who have long work days to get there.
Agree.
Fair enough. Is there a fee for marine structures? And if not, should there be? And I'm asking that question because I looked and I didn't see it. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I didn't see it.
That's a building department question, right? We don't really set fees.
Not so much as set the fee, but do you know if there is a fee? That's really the question.
Literally don't know.
We don't know because we don't deal with the fees.
All right, fair enough. And I found out the answer about the tax situation, so that one's off the table. Okay, I think I pretty much have everything. I'll just ask one more time. I think you kind of touched on it, but is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to see improved or standardized that we haven't discussed already?
I'm sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead, David.
I just think that so much time is wasted and so much delay takes place. I think that people put a lot of energy into a lot of the applications and they put a lot of work into it and a lot of expense, needless to say. But if that can be monitored and checked, I know years ago, I chaired a board and I used to call people. I used to have a form letter and it would go out a week or two before. And I'd say, listen, look at your application and here are some blatant deficiencies. I'm going to strike it from the calendar, or you got to get this a week in advance or something else. And the point is, if you start with an incomplete and missing items, I hate to say it, but it always ends up just becoming a laborious task of getting them to address the issues. Why don't you have this? I mean, and it really is not fair because it's very time consuming. I say that and late papers tend to be the biggest thing, but lay it all out. Well, you're supposed to have a current survey, for example, in many of these. I don't know if that's the case here, but I think it should be. But well, it's kind of, nothing's changed. It's been 20 years, been 15 years. And I go, well, Lord, it says within 1 year. And so you don't have it. Why are we sitting here? Why did people come out? Why did everyone give this their attention when that may have something that really does tilt everybody or affect everything? So I just think it's a matter of completeness. If there could be whatever you come up with it, if we all agree on and you have a set of submissions, please, I would just urge that once you agree on what they are, they belong to everybody to comply with, board or commissioners, and as well as the applicant's counsel, and that's it. Because it's expensive, it's laborious, and there's no need for it. That's all. I just find that those are the delays. Usually the board, once it gets to the meat of things, is pretty good. And most boards are, but it's just moving out all the other stuff that's in the way. We sat through a few applications. I mean, I'm new to this, so I kind of trying to play catch up and learn this, but it's like, come on, you don't have plans on this lift. You don't have this for this. Come on. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is a huge project and you've done all of this detail, but it isn't presented. So I would just say a clear presentation in completeness, fine. I mean, there's going to be additional things, fine, and they'll be addressed. Enough said.
Yep. One thing I find frustrating that would be nice to have, and I'm not really prepared to give it an absolute solution, but in general terms, if you watch the planning board, a lot of times they say, well, what did Harbor Coastal say about this? And in certain aspects, we are the paramount land use board. So it would be important if the commission had maybe a little more authority. Thankfully, Frank does a great job. From my personal experiences, I call Frank, he calls me right back. We have a scofflaw situation on a waterfront home, and the building department's been very good about going out there and doing enforcement. We have this other issue with the county, where the county is just ignoring us. It would be nice if the commission had a little more teeth, and I don't know exactly what the right vehicle for that is, but in certain circumstances, it would be nice if we could really, I don't know, for lack of a better term, power, and not in a way to, and not to use it as a sword, but more or less to impress upon the applicant or the situation that these are some really serious circumstances. So when people don't comply, or when we have an issue that's very important, like the jetty situation, that we would be in a position to maybe something tantamount to like a stop work, or something along the lines where we could act on our own and then have follow-up by the village manager or the building department to enforce these different things. But again, Frank's doing a great job. Jerry's doing a great job. They're all available for us. They're all responsive. It's just, there are a couple of situations that we currently have where I feel that we're not doing everything we could do because we're limited in enforcement capacity.
Fair enough. Anything else? How would you characterize your communication between your board and the other boards, zoning, planning, BAR?
Indirect. I would carry, we ask what we ask, we say what we say, and then what happens before us is communicated to them through the staff and vice versa. It works more or less. I'm not sure if there's a better process out there, but so far what's happened is indirect communication.
All right. So then how do you deal with a situation? For example, code says that your board can look at the aesthetics of a particular project when it falls within your jurisdiction, and it also falls within the jurisdiction of the BAR. What happens? What happens to the applicant?
Yeah, I mean, that's, you can think of about a dozen different ways that two different boards could look at the same set of facts. Some of those, the standards are different, right? If I were looking for an example, I might say in wetlands concerns, in floodplain concerns, we have floodplain considerations, and the way that we think about our floodplain safety policies overlap with what planning does, but we don't have to have the same view. We have a different policy, we have different language, and we have a different view. So, or SECRA, we have policy 44, policy 7 and 7A. How those come out are somewhat different. And the answer, I think, is that the answer we come to doesn't have to be the same as another land use board. If planning has to think about SECRA, but SECRA's different, and there's offsets, and something good can cancel out something bad. We don't operate that way. Where consistency is a checkbox, it's binary. So in that sense, they could come to the conclusion that something's fine under SECRA. We could come to the conclusion that the same project may be fine under SECRA, but it's injurious to the wetlands and it's inconsistent with policy 44, right? So two different rules results in two different outcomes. Planning might take a view of the no net fill rule that is different from how we read the no net fill rule under our floodplain policies. They might say, we think this is fine because it's non-riverine and it's coastal. We may say, we have never allowed net fill in a floodplain. We might come to different conclusions on the same facts because we're applying different rules or policies. Does that answer your question?
It does. Has the board ever given any consideration to asking any other boards for its recommendation?
We do all the time for SECRA purposes, right? We are rarely the lead agency for SECRA.
Mm-hmm.
Usually
Exactly.
planning is,
Exactly.
All the time, they ask us for recommendations, and we draft a memo, and we put our concerns there, and we tell them what we think, and then as the lead agency, they take that into account and they do what they're going to do. There's no reason not to do the reverse when appropriate. So if we ever need to know in order to do our thinking what another agency thinks, we'll do that. The examples I thought of, no other agency would look at it quite the way we do, because we're applying different rules or policies, and therefore I can't see us saying to planning, will you please tell us whether you think that this has a negative impact on the wetlands? Because they don't look at that in the same way. They don't formulate their opinion on it in the same way that we do.
Right. Yeah, Thomas, I think you hit on it with lead agency. You know, we've never been lead agency. We've always deferred to the planning board as lead agency on SECRA. I think we have the authority to be lead agency. We've never vied for that, and I still think that the planning board has the ultimate decision on whether or not we can be lead agency. But we're usually not. With respect to your aesthetics, there's at least one application where no aesthetics have come up, and that's relevant when it's, let's say, a marine structure. If the Harbor Coastal Commission doesn't approve of a marine structure, it doesn't go anywhere, right? There's no other agency that can trump us in terms of marine structure. So if we tell the applicant, you know, think about these aesthetic changes, they're going to have to do it if they want the marine structure permit. They can't go to the Architectural Review Board or another board and get dueling aesthetic recommendations.
So
am I right about that?
One thing that occurs to me, and David, I see you want to talk. I'll give you the floor in a sec. One thing that occurs to me is there's the place where there's likely to be an overlap between aesthetics for like BAR and us is our view shed policy concerns anything that you can see from Harbor Island. I could see there being a building where BAR would weigh in their main capacity, and we would also consider the view shed implications of a building. But even then, we're not really applying the same thing. They're asking, does this look nice? We're asking, does this change a resource, in that case, a visual resource of the kind that the residents of this village expect us to protect as part of our local waterfront revitalization plan? So it's a different question. It's fundamentally, is this the sort of thing the residents want us to protect near the waterfront, rather than do we think it looks good and fit with the neighborhood? You follow me?
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So-
David was going to ask something.
Yeah, just one thing. You're absolutely correct, Thomas. But let's assume for the moment that we have parallel issues to be decided by two agencies. It's not improper or inconceivable that both agencies could view this and make a rationally based decision that differed. As long as they're not arbitrary and capricious, you still need both. So it's very possible somebody could say, listen, we just don't agree, just like we're different members and we feel on the same facts. That, as long as no one's being arbitrary, many courts have, in reviewing matters, as you know, Thomas, will say, we would not have reached that conclusion, but it's not arbitrary. It's different. And that's fine. And I just comment on one thing. Somebody earlier made a comment that it was arbitrary and capricious on the administrative stare decisis. And I just pulled up at the case. It says right there, it's 19, Judge Meyer wrote for the Court of Appeals, absent an explanation by the agency, an administrative agency decision, which on essentially the same facts as underlaid a prior agency determination, reaches a conclusion contrary to the prior determination, is arbitrary and capricious. I was wrong. So they merged them both there and say that. Yeah.
Yeah, we not only should somebody not expect a different result if they come before us with substantially the same project, we are actually bound not to give them a different result. You come to us with the same project, you're going to get the same answer.
Fair enough. Okay. 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 I got it. I got it. I got it. All right. Unless there's anything else, I think I'm good. I can take
Yeah.
this and,
One last thing.
yes, please.
Potentially process related. I don't have a solution. So one thing that I think we tend to do a lot is retread the same territory again and again when a project comes back a lot. And I don't think that's very good for anyone. I don't think it's good for us because it's probably a bad use of time. I don't think it's good for the applicant. Sometimes it unearths something new that maybe we would have wanted to unearth. Sometimes it unearths something that wasn't a problem last time, and now people are thinking about it differently. So that's a little bit potentially unfair, or at least that's a possibility. So one thing that might be helpful is just to think about if an applicant comes and we send them away without a decision, maybe memorializing somehow. Here's a summary of the discussion. Here's what we thought were the open items at this point, and then start the next time they come with that. I understand that we don't close any doors if they come back and change something. It's all still on the table, but I do think there's a potential procedural efficiency improvement just to streamline multiple applications on all of the same facts with an additional either change that they've made or like, imagine if we're like, we're good with every single thing but this, they come back and they change this, and then we talk about a few other things again. Even if it doesn't change our opinion on that, it's inefficient. So that's, I don't know what the solution is there, but I think that's something that maybe if the other commissioners agree is something to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, Seamus, thank you. I think there's a certain degree to which we are reliant on our own notes and recollection for where we left things last time. With all the stuff we have to review, we don't have a transcript, and we don't go back and, we don't remember it just like it happened last night. It's a month ago. Sometimes it's several months ago. It would be, if we could figure out a way to sort of, have a working summary of where the application was at last time, what's been laid to rest, and what we left as open issue.
Oh,
And some of the more together and process oriented applicants in front of us will often do that for us and say, okay, we've pinned down all these things. Here are the 3 things that were left open last time. That's helpful, but it's also slanted because they're reading it their way. But we, on our side, we often rely on our recollection and our notes to do that, and somewhat imperfectly. It'd be great if we were better as a commission, maybe with the help of staff, at sort of getting down this is what's left open for next time. Let's pick it up there when we see you next.
fair enough. I think what'll help that is having these work sessions. I think having a work session before your actual board meeting or before the actual public hearing, it allows time for you all to get caught up to speed as to where things left off, and it allows staff to to introduce again where you left off. So I think these work sessions will assist with that. So
All right.
yeah. So unless there's anything else, I think I'm good. I'll take this, figure out what the next steps are, and I'll get back to you.
Thank you. I hope this was useful.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Gave me a lot of perspective.
Thank you, commissioners. Talk to you tomorrow night.
Thanks for the time. See you tomorrow night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.